Callaway man has got the same move with every club. I'm the only golfer with the feeling of greatness. I'm the only golfer living that's got the master move and the feeling of greatness.
Hey, it's Todd Graves here, and welcome to the Feeling of Greatness podcast. I'm excited to be here with Joe DiChiara. Well, I'll give him a little background on Joe, but welcome to the Graves Golf Performance Center.
Thanks, Todd. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's we're sitting out here in the Callaway fitting room, and it's pretty nice little area. They came in here and built out a really great custom fitting center for us, and it looks great. And people are starting to come out and get their single plane fit when they're out here.
Yeah,
so
this is an amazing room.
The tee box, you saw the tee deck. It's 80% there, 85% there. We got some construction going on behind us, but we are, we're building the performance center as a place where, I kind of look at it like a sanctuary in a way, because, I always look at the game of golf like it's a solitary game. It's a game where, it's a meditation to me. I don't know if you feel the same way about the game of golf.
It's definitely a place that I like to go to clear my head, relax a little bit, and
go to the end of the range by yourself.
Space. Yep, absolutely.
Get a bucket of balls and get into your head and hit some shots and maybe learn something, and then that's what I always loved about the game. And so we built a 6-hole training course, which I'll show you a tour here after we're through the podcast, and then we got a practice green over here, and then the maintenance barn, but that's eventually going to be a lounge area and stuff down there. So we're getting there.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Place looks great.
Yeah,
looks
thanks.
Great.
Well, Joe and I have a bit of a history, and much of the instruction that you see that is the we teach Mo Norman's single plane swing, but behind Mo Norman's single plane swing is biophysics. And biophysics is just, how do you become the best ball striker that's ever lived? Well, you better do something biophysically correct, right? And so,
absolutely.
And then if you take that a step further and you say, what are the metrics or what's the data behind this, right?
Sure.
And then that's what I started digging into quite a few years ago, and then I run into Joe, and Joe was working for a company called K-Motion,
right?
And we had tasked. I don't know if I approached you guys approached me, but we started building a 3D system to train the single plane swing, and it was a beautiful system, and it was an amazing system. You guys did an amazing job building the software out and getting it to a point where you could get biofeedback and train. This is Joe's background, and when I met Joe, I realized here's the smartest guy in the room, right? Here's the smartest guy in the room that knows more about this stuff, not only because you knew so much about it, but because you also had taught so many people using it.
Right.
Technology was your thing over in Asia, and I'll let you give some background on that. And the people you had taught and the success you had teaching a form of golf that started with science and not, let's go make that ball fly straighter.
Exactly. Yeah.
So give me a little background. Just tell me your little story. You've done it before, but let's do it for the audience. About Asia, about the players you worked with.
Sure. Yeah. Well, as Todd, as you mentioned, a big part of my background is in science and data and technology side of golf, and that's what brought me to my role at K-Motion. I was there for almost a decade as head of golf. The majority of my role at K-Motion was education and certifying coaches around the world on how to understand this data, not only understand it, but how to put it into action, right? Because data is only as good as what you can take from it and make some change. So I developed their certification programs for them and traveled all around and certified coaches all around the world. And then I did the same thing at 4D Motion when I went there. And obviously now you have that 4D Motion system, right, after the 3D system. So continuing that for your students, which is great.
Well, yeah. So just so people know, K-Motion obviously went through, I don't know if they're even around anymore. They're at some level.
Yeah.
But Joe went to a company called 4D, which the sensors were easier to use. They're smaller, and so and it was iOS based. That was the biggest thing, is making it iOS based. Right. So now we had an iOS based system. So we got a K-Motion system that uses your PC, and then we got an iOS based system which tends to be a lot more user friendly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Joe, you and I, I tasked Joe. I kind of tricked Joe. He doesn't know that I tricked him, but I kind of tricked him. In a way, it wasn't a full trick. It wasn't like a conscious trick.
It was a bait.
Yeah. So Joe and I Joe approached me with an idea, but this idea is to put a single plane junior academy together. And I think it's a great idea. And I love the idea. And I've always loved this idea. But it hasn't been like on our radar because our business is so busy with our current demographic. So, but I've always wanted to do this. And I've never really had, to be honest with you, I've never really had a place to do it. Like I've never had a Graves Golf Performance Center. I've never had a guy like you that wants to take it on full time. So we kind of said, yeah, we need to do this junior thing because we want to get people, we want to get more Brysons in the world, right?
Right.
And more Mo Normans in the world. But at the same time, I didn't know how I could build it in the business. And then you came along and said, Todd, we need to do this. And it's your expertise. So I said, great, Joe, I love this idea. It's beautiful. Do me a favor. And this is where I tricked him. I said, write a curriculum for me. And just give me a 30-day curriculum on a training program for a junior. And so Joe laid out this training, and I kind of knew what he'd come up with, but I really didn't. I was like, it'll be great. Well, Joe came up here. We're going to have our first meeting about it and kind of dig into how we're going to put this program together because we want to build the greatest online program for juniors you can, where they can be integrated and coached online in the single plane swing. So anywhere. Yeah. So if you're a junior anywhere in the world, or you're a grandparent, or you're a parent with a kid in the world, and you want them to learn the single plane swing, they can just go to the website and do it, right? And it's going to be so Joe comes to me and he hands me this 7-page training schedule, and I look at it. I'm like, Joe, we've already done this. Is exactly what I came up with. I mean, it's a mirror image of what I just put together in the last 9 months for single plane 30.
Seen yours.
And you had never seen. Joe had never seen our single plane 30 curriculum because it's locked down. You don't get to see it unless you buy it. So I didn't even think about throwing it in there. I just didn't ever think about it. Right. And all of a sudden now, Joe hands me the sheet. I'm like, yeah, this curriculum's already done. We just got to add the last week in there, which was more gamifying it.
Right. And
I'm like, Joe, I mean, and here's why they're exactly the same. I mean, we're talking exactly the same. You came to me and you said, hey, we got to teach foundation. Yep. Then we got to teach positions. Then we teach sequence. Then we teach speed. That's the formula.
Structure,
right?
Sequence, speed.
Yeah.
All there.
Yeah. So, as you know, in the single plane 30 program that we've been launching every single month, I talk about the address position, the positions, the sequence, adding the braking system, and then adding speed. And it's just all right there. So guys, listen, the reason I'm kind of bringing this up is Joe and I look at this and we say to ourselves the same thing people say about the single plane swing. Why isn't golf taught this way? Mm-hmm. I mean, why isn't everybody teach golf this way? Like, this is the way it fundamentally should be taught. If it was taught this way, people would have struggled less in their lives, like the juniors. Well, if you're a junior right now,
it's especially at the junior level, right? Because of my time in Asia, at the junior academy that I founded over there, we had so many talented kids. A lot of them went on to get Division I scholarships. One of the girls that I coached there has now won 2 U.S. Opens, including the last one. So the important thing about the junior aspect, which is so critical, is, and I think everybody who plays golf at in their older years understands this, it's much harder to change your golf swing after a motor pattern has been established than when you can establish a new one.
It's Graves golf, right? It's Graves golf. That's to be honest with you, and the reason that we've become so connected in this process is because I believe the only way for these adults to change is to understand the biophysics of it.
Absolutely.
Because if you're just out there repeating the motion, you're running the old neural programs, you're not going to change. You got to nail down your neural pattern in this area is where we have to focus, right?
Absolutely.
And so
if you do it out of order, like we've talked about, if you go speed before sequence or sequence before positions, you are going to have breakdowns both in performance and in your health, right?
Yeah.
We understand that.
Yeah, the injury. The injury.
Yeah.
And so, Joe, it's like we're brothers in this mission to figure out and put together the most efficient, results producing programs that get you. And so here's what's funny about single plane 30. And like a lot of times, like, we're creators and we put stuff out there and you kind of see what happens, right? You kind of see how the audience responds to it. You see how the students respond to it. You see the results you're getting. Mm-hmm. I mean, you pretty much know, look, this is the way to do it, but you just don't know what you're going to get back. And it's been to me, that's where I learn as a coach. You and I learn because we throw our coaching out there and we see what we get back, right?
Sure.
and then you're like, I'm never gonna do that again.
Right.
You know, or you go, wow, that got some great results. So we're always in that process as well. And when we started putting single plane 30 out there, just like what we'll do with this junior program, the response was overwhelmingly they're like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And here is why, and they're like, these guys are like, this is transformational. I had a doctor call me the other day, and he goes, Todd, this will be a life changer. This is a life changer. And I'm like, and so I look at it like it's common sense. Mm-hmm. I just put something common sense out there. I look at it like this just makes so much sense. Why isn't it always this way? But I'm always kind of fascinated by that because I look at it like this is logical. But why is that so? Why is that common sense when people haven't? Is it because the industry doesn't do it this way? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say, right? I mean, you and I think exactly alike, and that's why we see eye to eye on all this stuff. And what we see that doesn't make sense, we're right on the same page there. But you said something in just a little while ago that I want to expand on because you used the word efficiency. And you really hit the nail on the head there because we know in golf there's more than one way to get the job done, right? But that doesn't always mean that it's the most efficient way. Now, when I use the word efficiency and when I teach that, right, especially when I'm talking about the biomechanics of the golf swing, efficiency is about how are you going to get your biggest results, your best results with the least risk of injury, and how can you do that in the most consistent way over time, right? That's what I look at when I talk about consistency. Efficiency. Efficiency is critical for every golfer, but when we're talking about juniors, especially tournament juniors, efficiency goes to the top of the list because the difference between a junior winning an event, qualifying for a U.S. Amateur, qualifying for a professional event, we're talking about 4 rounds of golf, right? So even that little tweak to be more efficient over time might gain them an extra stroke here, an extra stroke there, a couple extra yards here off the drive so they can hit a wedge in instead of an 8, whatever it is. Efficiency is critical, and that's what we're looking to really capitalize on and build out.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the same way about, our 60 plus, clients and students, and I think the same way about it. But they play golf for a different reason.
Sure.
Their aspirations are, hey, I just want to hit solid, good shots. And I just want to have fun playing. And so it's the same thing, except now these kids, like, I coach a few juniors now and what I see in junior golf, and you're exactly right about efficiency because they grow at such different levels.
Sure.
You'll have one junior hitting it 300 yards.
Right.
And you have one, and the other one, he hasn't grown yet, and he hits at 210, but they're in the same age category.
Exactly.
And so now you're like, okay, your short game better be remarkable, right? That's where right now, mechanically, we got to get you hitting fairways and greens, but you're still hitting 200 yards in every par 4.
Yep.
And then there's other kids hitting wedges in, so you got to get up and down like 90% of the time.
Absolutely.
If you're going to beat these guys.
Yep.
And then they grow, and then their game changes, and you're like, okay, now you got to work on the efficiency of your golf swing, right?
Sure.
But why not get ahead of all this? Like I sometimes will sit with my junior out in Pebble Beach, and we'll look at the other juniors, and he'll look at them and go, why aren't they working on their swings? Like, I go, it's hurting them now, but it's really going to hurt them in the future. Mm-hmm. Like when these guys get to where they're stronger and now they're injuring themselves because they can't do what they're doing. When they get to where now they're stepping up their competition because they got to beat that guy in college that's better than they are.
Right.
And that guy's efficient, So
they're not building the right foundation right at the right times. So yeah, absolutely.
So give me some background on, you've taught some major winners as well.
Yep. Yeah. At my time at K-Motion, really fortunate to have a relationship with Padraig Harrington and, taught Padraig a little bit about the biomechanics, his system, what his kinematic sequence meant, things like that. Worked with, as I mentioned, Yuka Sasso. I worked with her as a junior when she was in my, came to my academy, and she's gone on to do some amazing things. And if she continues, she'll be a Hall of Famer on the LPGA Tour. And then numerous other players, in the past. Paul Peterson was someone I worked with for a long time. He's won twice on the European Tour. And now Chan Kim, who not many people might know about, but Chan's been just killing it on the Japanese tour for years. I think he won Q School twice, and he's finally broken through, and now he's a real up-and-comer on the PGA Tour. So
Nice.
I've worked with Chan in the past as well.
And so tell me, so anybody who doesn't really understand biophysics or the value of it in instruction, because, I don't want people to think, well, oh my God, these guys go out there and they're, it's like too complicated to understand. It's for you and me, like I see a golf swing in terms of position, sequence, and motion.
Sure.
I see it in those terms. And then I see the resulting club movement because of that.
Exactly.
So I don't see club movement first, right? I see an established plane of a club, and then I see everything that's moving it, and then I see the result of what happens to the club movement. That's the order that I see a golf swing.
Right.
And most people probably see club movement only.
Sure. That's the first thing people pick up on. Like,
right.
Oh, the club's in a great spot there, here.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that comes before that.
Yeah.
Because in anything in life, especially in the golf swing, the dog should be wagging the tail, not the tail wagging the dog. Right. So yeah, I mean, in terms of the simplicity of it, there's a lot of directions you can go with explaining it, but the way I describe it to a lot of amateur golfers is, I'm sure there's been times where you were watching golf on TV, you're watching the PGA Tour, and you're thinking to yourself, my gosh, that guy doesn't look like he's swinging hardly at all, yet the golf ball's going 350 yards, right? That is biomechanics, biophysics, swing efficiency at its best. Because those players are using their bodies in a way where it doesn't even look like they're expending much energy, but they're doing it in a order, right? Sequence order to make it look fluid, but produce maximum output through their body.
That's the cause and effect thing that we see, because if you're not getting that efficiency, right?
Exactly.
So most people don't, right? So what's behind that? Like what position, what sequence of movements,
Sure.
what stability problems are you having?
Right.
Which is where I tend to go a lot. Those things are the cause of the inefficiencies. And so we're always looking for causes, and that's
Sure.
where I see the kind of the differences is we're identifying in the correct order.
It has to be in the correct order.
Because it's like your backswing's messed up, but your takeaway is you're sliding your pelvis in the takeaway.
Yep.
So your backswing is steep or whatever, and then you're like, well, it's your backswing, but it's not. It's the first part of the backswing.
Right. Yeah, and there's usually a series of compensatory movements that happen after that, right? But you're always looking at the end result, and it's that's the art of coaching, I think, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you do so well is you can kind of back it up to a point where you could see what that first domino is.
There's two things that I try to think about. A lot of times, how do I become a better coach? But also, it's like, what's the most powerful form of a coach? What I mean by that is how do I get results? Like how can I get results? And I have innately figured this one out. Now, maybe I'll change this, but this seems to be effective. Pick the one most important thing in the order. Okay, there's your thing, right?
Yep.
That's it. Don't move on.
Yeah, right.
Don't move on until you get this, right? And that's like, it's like end of conversation, Right. And it's like, because what happens is then they hit a shot and it goes left. Why'd it go left? What did I just say?
Just stick with that.
Hey, that's secondary to what you got to be doing right now, right? And I think the power of coaching is that accountability piece, because stay accountable to this process. Don't get ahead of it. Don't worry about crap you shouldn't be worried about, because now you're chasing your tail. Right?
100%. And you hit the nail on the head, and that's why it's so hard for people to change their golf swings, because they're constantly adjusting based on the outcome and the result. So, what I do a lot, especially with tournament players, when we're making swing changes, it depends on the person how long I do this, but I'll tell you right now, there's times where for weeks I'll have them make their new movement. We might have them in 3D, but they'll be making their new movement, hitting balls into a net without any feedback at all. Because when I say, let me rephrase that, any feedback on what the golf ball's doing.
Yeah.
We'll give them feedback on what their body's doing and if they're doing that new movement, that new pattern correctly. But I do not want them to see what's happening with the golf ball, because it's going to make them even subconsciously change.
Are we the same person?
Sometimes I
Because here's what's
so,
interesting.
Yeah.
So people ask me all the time, because I went from a period where when I met Mo, I was playing on I was playing tour events. I went meeting Mo and I'm like, I'm going to change my swing. And I was a decent player. I wasn't what I wanted to be, but I'm like, okay, I'm struggling with my game. I see Mo, I'm like, holy crap, that's totally common sense. I understood the biophysics of it immediately. I saw what he was doing with the golf club. I realized why he was so good. I said, I'm gonna change my swing to Mo. And so I became friends with Mo and did the whole thing with Mo. But when I went from meeting Mo to change my swing to when people say, how long did it take you, Todd? And I said, 2.5 years probably, to get it where I could semi-play again.
Yep. That
2.5 year period, dude, I didn't hit balls outside.
Yeah.
I went into nets.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to see the ball. I was like, it's ugly right now, right? And then, so the ratio to me was for every 100 I hit into the net, I might go hit 2 or 3 outside.
Sure.
Because I wanted to see, because if I get it going to the net pretty good, I want to see what the result was.
Sure.
But it was that ratio. It was like, don't hit balls outside. Only do it if you get kind of the move. I focused on a video screen matching positions.
Sure.
That's what I did. And people are like, wow. I mean, so when people ask me, how'd you learn most things? I'm like, you won't do this. Like you're not going to be this disciplined where you're going to go into a net and hit balls until you get it.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because what I was doing in that process was getting biofeedback.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was looking at the screen going, was I right or not?
Yep.
And then I'll be, nope, I want to be more here. I'd get some biofeedback on that position. Then I'd go try to repeat that and look at the video. Right. It wasn't direct biofeedback, but it was video feedback.
Sure. And
that's the only thing we had. We didn't have the tools we have today.
Right.
So yeah, hitting into the net, man.
It's so powerful. And the other thing to that is we've talked about this before, and I know you're the same. I'm very big on progressions, right? Practice progressions. And my process with especially tournament players is if we're making a new movement, you're going to do it first without a golf club in your hand. Then we're going to add a club, but we're going to do it slowly. Then we're going to add speed. Then we're going to add a ball. Then we're going to add a target. And then we're going to add pressure, and we're going to do it in a tournament,
there
right?
You go.
So we
what
do
a great
it in
process.
that order, right? And that way you don't have these breakdowns.
As opposed to adding pressure.
First. Like, let me go do it in the club championship tomorrow. Yeah, let's see how that works out.
Yeah. Wow. I've been there. Yeah. Oh, man, that's so good. Hey, I want to make a point to what you just said. Whether you choose Graves Golf as your coaching place you want to be coached, or you choose other coaches, if they don't have a process of coaching, Joe just said, here's my process. Ask your coach.
What's your process?
What's your process? I mean, that should be, don't take a lesson from somebody who doesn't have a process.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't do it. Yeah. Don't walk into a pro. And if he goes, I just take out there and see how you're doing, he's going to give you a Band-Aid fix that's going to be maybe worse for you.
It's like going into surgery with a surgeon without any tools.
Without any tools.
Like literally.
What's your process, sir? I don't know. I just throw in the table and I'll just start cutting and see what happens, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's so true. Because first thing you said, here's my process. Man, process is everything.
Is key.
Because process, and this is what, in the whole single plane 30 and the single plane learning process isn't just like, here's your formula and your stepping stones. Process is, here's your deduction plan. Like if process A is working well, you go to process step 2.
Yeah.
If step 2 is working well, you go to step 3.
Yep.
So you're not always going, man, it's a checkpoint. Check.
And it's exactly, but it's also a system there to help you have some fallback too. So if you get to step 3 and you're struggling, right, you can take a step back to 2, right, and just reinforce it and then work your way back up, right? It's like a ladder. You can work your way up and down the rungs, and that way you're going to always have safety below, but you're still striving to get to that next rung.
Yeah. No, it's so good. A process is so good. I've been in this process kick in the last maybe 3 years because business requires it.
Life requires it.
Life. Maybe I'm bad at that one. Structure of businesses require it. The more my life, I hate to say this, but the less random my life is, the better it is.
Yep.
Yep. You throw curveballs at me, I'm like, oh God, I'm dodging curveballs all day. Where if you just give me my pattern, and maybe age has gotten to me in that regard. Like now that I've gotten older, I'm kind of like, I just want to wake up and go to the academy and
have an easy day.
Have an easy day and teach some golf swings and I want to run my process. I want to help a few people and hang out with some good guys at the academy, and that's good for me. But yeah, process. It's where I've gotten to, and maybe I had to evolve too. As an instructor, I was that guy too, going, man, let's just learn model Mo, and that's a great way to start. But there is a there is a process to modeling Mo that I built. And then I added a numerical value to that process.
Absolutely.
And which, Joe, I got to tell you,
You quantified it.
Oh, once I quantified it, that was a game changer for me.
100%.
Because what you think
you're not grabbing things out of the air.
No, but what you think you see and what you see are not even remotely close.
Well, not only what you think you see and what you see, right? That's the first part, right? But then it goes to what you think you feel and what's really happening is the next level. So quantifying it just took it to the next level.
Yeah. So tell me, this is a question. I want to throw this question out there because I this is what we as coaches are tasked with. How do you teach feel?
That's a great question, because how many times have we heard, I'm a field player, especially when you teach at a higher level and you've got some guys on tour, girls on tour, and you're like, I'm a field player, that's it, right? Well, my argument back to that, which is what I say a lot, is your feel changes, right? Depending upon the day and depending upon your level, your feel could change by the week, by the day, by the hour. It depends on when we're talking about the golf swing. So if you're not attaching a feel to a number, then how are you ever going to understand what's actually changing or what you should feel, right? Because let's say, for example, you're trying to get your rotation in your backswing from, of your torso from 65 degrees to 85 degrees, right? It's hard to feel it. You can feel a difference, but it's hard to feel the exactness of where you're trying to get to, right? And we know golf is a very exact sport. So if you're not seeing a number and attaching that number to a feel, and you're saying, okay, now I'm at 72 degrees and I feel this, I feel it here, whatever. You could take feels out onto the golf course, but when you're trying to change your golf swing, you have to attach feels to numbers so that you know what you're trying to feel out there, because you don't want numbers out there. You do want to play with feel and intuition and things like that, but bringing it back to a number when you're trying to train is really critical, because then you're establishing baselines, you're establishing new numbers, and you can then know and have the confidence in knowing, yeah, I made a change, here's what it feels like, now I'm going to go ahead and put it to scoring.
So what you just described is the fast track. That's the fast track to change, because if you can attach a feel to a number and you get you're getting biofeedback. It's the only way you can do that.
Yep.
You're getting biofeedback. So now you can then just simply do repetitions to build the skill, and as long as you're hitting those ranges, you'll build a new feel into the reps, and
100%.
You just shortcut the learning process.
100%.
You just hardwired it. Now, if I don't have a 3D system to get new numbers, I can do a pretty good job with video, and I've done that with video.
You could do a pretty good job, but again,
it's not as accurate.
It's not as accurate, especially when it comes to rotational, right?
Yeah, rotation's always the one.
In video, you could draw some lines and say, okay, your head's moving this much, your pelvis is moving this much, linear. 2D video is okay for linear, right? If you draw some lines and you see a person's moving side to side, up, down, back, forward, that's okay. But when it comes to the rotational aspects and the three-dimensional aspects of the golf swing, you can't determine, like, in terms of a rotation, like, let's take rotation, for example, because that's a good one. You can't tell how much the rib cage is turning, because each shoulder has about 40 degrees of rotational capability, right? So you could really fake out how much rotation you actually have.
I do it all the time. I under-rotate my torso all the time, but I still get plenty of arm movement. So
exactly. So you can kind of see, but you're never going to get it to the level where you need to, like you said, fast track it, hardwire it, and make a change faster.
Yeah. Joe's doing a pitch for the 4D system right now, because, I mean, this is all year long, guys are playing golf, but now in the off season, they want to do some hard training.
Exactly.
And in this, what Joe's talking about is with the 4D systems, you can literally add a numerical value to the change you're making, and biofeedback train, and be doing that all winter long, and you'll be a changed golfer if you'll do reps inside that little window.
I've seen changes faster than even I believed to be possible when I first started using biofeedback.
When I first got introduced to the biofeedback world, where I could actually build a system to give people direct biofeedback on the single plane swing, I would watch change happen in real time.
Yep.
Like when you watch. The worst experience for an instructor, I like giving our audience a little insight on what goes on in our heads, but what the worst experience for an instructor is to try to be making changes with a student on the range. He's worried about the ball flight. You're trying to fix his motion. Every time you get him where you want him, he somehow changes the the subject to where now he's asking, like you're talking about rotation of the torso. He's like, well, how about my trail foot? Look, and so you get into this like battle of look, we can't stay focused here on the stuff. And then the best way to do that, you throw them into a 4D system. You say, your job is hit that number.
Yep, that's it.
And they go,
make that green.
Make that green.
Yep.
Make that light up.
That's it.
And they go, making that green. You're like, I didn't have to say a word.
That's it.
I'm just watching you go through the motion here. And the game, because the game becomes make that green. And when you change the focus of the student to the desired outcome of the instructor, when you're on the same page, I got to get you more rotation, make that green, make that light up.
Yep.
Then you're like, okay, now you're doing it.
And you hit the nail on the head right there. Not just outcome, but learning. Learning goes through the roof when it's self-learning versus guided learning, right? Instead of us putting our hands on somebody and putting them in a position, that'll do something, but it's not doing anything for the learning process. So like the way that I explain it to students is if I sat here and asked you, Todd, what's 2 + 2? What's 2 + 2?
4.
4. What's 2 + 2?
4.
What's 2 + 2?
4.
Right. Are you learning anything or are you just repeating?
I had to think about it because I thought you were going to change the number on me. No.
But if I kept changing the number, right, and making it more randomized, then you have to continue to think and learn, right? And it's
That's
the same
true.
thing. It's the same thing with feel. You know, you put them in a position, you get that biofeedback going, and you let them hit it, and then you randomize it, or you narrow the constraints a little bit, and you just make their brain continue to learn what the movement needs to be.
That's it. It's the challenge.
It's a challenge. Right.
Dan Coyle, book The Talent Code. Dan is a friend of mine. I haven't talked to Dan in a few years, but when Dan wrote that book, and I did a podcast with him and brought him on for some interviews and stuff, and Dan researched, learning basically how to build a skill, how to build skills.
It's a great book, yeah.
Great book, yeah. And Dan had, I remember I was like, the whole time I was quizzing Dan, I'm like, I want to shortcut this process, Dan. How do I speed up the learning process? Can I eat salmon more? I was like, can I get more fat going in my body? I don't know,
Right.
He's like, no. Science is showing that it's really just repetition of the correct pattern, you know? And the worst thing you can do is repeating a bad pattern.
Exactly.
So it's like the two sides of the coin. It's like the best thing you can do is repeat the correct pattern. The absolute worst thing you can do is be repeating a bad pattern, because you're going to learn, your brain's picking that as well as a pattern. So yeah, that's what scares us as coaches. We're like, oh God, there's a pattern going on there. I want to interrupt that.
Yeah. You have to have more positive reps than bad ones, right? There's also a drill that I do with students, because it's also good, but you have to do it in moderation, where I call it the sandwich drill, where good movement, bad movement, good movement. So they feel the good and the good on the ends, right?
Dan talks about that too. Dan talks about, how does he phrase this in the book? I've kind of forgot, but he talks about that the mistake isn't the problem.
Right.
Like making a mistake when you're practicing training is the problem. It's not correcting that mistake immediately is the problem. So you're bouncing between, like, I want you to make mistakes, so you identify the correction, and that's a learning pattern as well.
Exactly.
I think that's important, because side hill lies on the golf course, you're never in perfect situations.
Sure.
So you're having to deal with a lot of changes out there. So I think all that stuff's great.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, so we're talking about, and I want this to come from Joe and not from me. That's why I'm asking this question, because I harp on this a lot in coaching. I want to shortcut the learning process, Joe. I want to make this go as fast as I can. Like, I want to learn the single plane swing as fast as I can, right? Mm-hmm. What's the shortcut for it?
It comes back to process again. It's doing positions first, then adding sequence, then adding speed, right? And doing that in a way where you're building those blocks up from the foundation up. And then I do believe using biofeedback is the way you have to. I mean, I hate to say that, because I'm never that type of person where, like, you have to do this, but But the task is to speed it up. Like, if it wasn't speeded up, you'd be like, you can do it.
You can do it with video. Yeah, right. That's a way to do it. There's a lot of ways. I mean, we have training aids that help. All these things are helpful tools, but nothing's as fast as biofeedback. Nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
No.
And nothing identifies it more readily than, like, how come I can't hit that position?
Right.
Like, you put me in biofeedback and you're like, you tighten it down, and I'm like, man, I gotta get my body over here a little bit to get that range. And then you're like, okay, I feel a little stretch in my right hip when I do that, right? Mm-hmm. So my flexibility's kind of gone, and I got to work on that flexibility. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, I'm like, I hit that pretty easy now.
There you go.
But it's because I'm identifying it. I'm not just, I'm extending my hips.
Right.
Oh well, I got away with it today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know, Joe. I mean, I don't know how. You know, I don't know how we can say it any more clear than that. I mean, you basically take words out of my mouth, and I want, you know, my mission here at Graves Golf, as you know, and now that we're going to build this junior program together, I'm super excited. I was thinking about this last night because we brainstormed this thing out yesterday. I was like, man, I have never thought much about juniors, and now that I am thinking about it, I'm like, man, I'm really excited about this next step that we're going to take. It's the future of golf.
Absolutely.
It's now we can involve a broader spectrum of avid golfers to the game, and now we have a place that because parents and grandparents are always asking me, how old should I start my kid? And you have kids.
Yep.
You know
5 and 3.
You know the learning process more than anybody. So that you're going to bring that experience to the table. I think that's important.
Absolutely.
Because you showed me your daughter yesterday, and the way they learn and the way they interact and stuff. And I think you bring that expertise to the table. So guys, look, I'm going to give you, if you guys, what we're not going to do, and the way we've kind of positioned this for the juniors is, we're not going to say blast the entire list and say send your juniors to this academy. I want them to go through the process of, I want you guys to get on a tell us your interest. So I'm going to give you a link, a website you can go to, and just give me your name and your information on this if you're interested, and if you know a junior or have a grandkid, or you have a son or a daughter who you want to start learning the single plane swing, and they want to start learning the single plane swing, or you know any kids that you think would be involved, I want you to get on this list, and then Joe's going to be contacting you and reaching out, and we'll get you started in the program. Our expectation of this, the link is gravesgolf.com/juniors. Let me just make sure that's accurate here. Yeah, gravesgolf.com/juniors, JUNIORS. And you guys will send that out. We'll send that out. We'll post that in a lot of our news media and things. But our goal is to build an online platform first.
Yep.
The online platform will be structured in a single plane 30-day training curriculum where they have daily training modules that they go through. So we're building this out right now. It's very similar to the current single plane 30 program we have, but it's a junior version of that. And so that's where we're going to start. Joe will be the coach inside the program, interacting so he'll be doing live sessions, Zoom calls, interacting with the kids that are in the program. And anything else that I forgot in that program?
No, I think you kind of hit all the points there. I'm unbelievably excited about it. Obviously, juniors are the future, right? And if we can get these kids started out swinging in a more efficient way earlier, right? The sky's the limit for what they can do. And of course, not all of them are going to go to a level where they're going to play pro or whatever, but college scholarships, play in high school, learn a swing that they can take for the rest of their lives, right?
It's a gift, right? To me, I was calling it a gift yesterday because so many of our parents and grandparents say, man, if I would have learned this when I was younger, right? Sure. And so we want people we want to be able to give them that gift. And it's a perfect gift for, you can be involved in the gift. Like one of the things I want to do in the program, we've talked about this, is I want the grandparents and parents involvement in the coaching because they can do it too, right? Sure. In the program. So it's going to be a 30-day training program. Eventually, I think as we expand this, you'll be doing camps with the juniors. Yep. I know we'll do some father-son type stuff, mother-daughter type stuff, parent-child stuff. We'll be doing a lot of things like that as we grow this thing out and get more interest in the junior side of single plane.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking.
Yeah, I was thinking about last night. Like this is kind of next level stuff for us. Now, it's going to be really fun to get this thing together.
Absolutely.
Joe, thank you for joining me today. Always great to have you. We're going to do a ton of these, by the way, since and you'll have, I'm sure, some great junior stories coming out too pretty soon.
We'll get some good things going. Yeah,
all right,
absolutely.
Thanks.
You got it, man.